Rafael Concepcion, RC to the World, is an award-winning photographer and author of the best-selling books Get Your Photography on the Web and the HDR Book. You may know that he works at Kelby Media and is an Adobe Certified Instructor in Photoshop, Illustrator, and Lightroom with over 14 years of experience in IT and e-commerce, and is an education and curriculum developer for the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. You may even follow him as host of the popular podcasts Photoshop User TV and Photography Tips and Tricks. But did you know that he was a DJ? That he drove an ice cream truck at 15? That he plays guitar and piano and has a degree in education? Do you know what keeps him awake at night? That's why you come to the chat, to learn the good stuff and what makes a Renaissance man like RC tick and talk. Speaking of, time's a-wasting, and I can't wait to share this chat with RC Concepcion, a man with a huge heart and more world-class talents than is probably legal. Ladies and gentlemen, RC Concepcion.
Hey everybody, it's Karen Hutton and the chat with Karen Hutton. Sound bite-sized insights from some of the coolest people on the planet. And I'm here with my friend RC Concepcion at Kelby Media. And I'm really excited that he agreed to sit down and talk with us because you're going to learn some stuff about RC that you may not have known before. I certainly didn't. So this has been kind of a revelation, hanging out with you.
It's weird. It's a little, I don't talk about it a lot of the times. And it's, I mean, it's not that it's embarrassing, but I always feel like, why would anybody want to know that kind of stuff?
I know, I feel the same way. And yet, now I'm understanding why people say, oh, we want to hear these things, because I wanted to hear from you. So we have similar, we don't have the same kind of background, but similar in the sense that we've done many, many things that all led us to this place. So I don't know that a lot of people know that you, were a DJ.
Yeah.
Drove an ice cream truck.
Yes.
Have a degree in education.
Yep. Yeah, I have. I've done a lot of different things. I've done a lot of odd things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been good.
So do the rundown.
All right. So let's see. So when I was younger, before college. Well, all right. So I'm trying to think about it. So I graduated high school when I was 15.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I was graduating high school when I was 15. I moved to California for like 6 months.
Where in California?
Sunnyvale.
Okay.
That area.
Really?
See?
Okay, the beat goes on. All right.
So I did that. While I was doing that, I was working at an ice cream truck. I was driving a Mr. Softy ice cream truck very illegally at 15. Oh. Yeah, that's a bad story too. But
Mr. Softy.
I have a lot of stories. It's weird. I have a lot of really weird stories. But anyway, so I did that. I originally went to school for teaching the deaf. That's what I wanted to do. I was actually going to be a sign language teacher. It gets weirder, right? See? But I didn't like the way that it was being handled at the time. Right? A lot of people don't know a lot of stuff about deaf culture, but I felt like at the time, the deaf culture program there was kind of dealing with it more as remediation, as therapy, as deaf person in a hearing world versus their own world, their own culture, their own language, and all that stuff. And that was really around the time of programs of bicultural, bilingual education. And so I figured, all right, well, why don't I become a teacher, an English teacher, and get my degree in English? And I've always been a fan of English. I've always been a fan of writing. I've always been a fan of stories.
Wordsmith.
Yeah, and that's one of those. And that's one of those things that it was a very seminal moment in high school that propelled all of this kind of stuff that I use a lot of the times when I talk to people about photography. Right. But anyway, so I got a degree in English. I was focused on creative dramatics and Shakespearean literature.
Love it.
So I did all of that stuff. And then from there, I was really young. So I was teaching high school and I was probably 2 years ahead of the people that were there.
Wow.
And it wasn't that I hated it, but that I felt so young at it, and I was in upstate New York, I was in the middle of nowhere, and I was just like, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life, I'm gonna spend 2 years here to try to get tenure to spend the next 25.
Right.
And all I've ever seen is the South Bronx and upstate New York, and I was like, I kinda wanna see more.
Yeah.
So I went to work for IBM. So I worked for IBM for a while. I did microelectronics, did data warehousing, did database stuff. I got recruited out of there, I moved to Germany. I lived in Germany for a while.
Didn't know that either.
Doing large-scale web development.
Things I don't know about you.
Yeah, building big websites. So we built like Barnes & Noble size sites, kind of stuff like that, and web deployment. And When I left English and I went into the tech world and I did a lot of tech work, I was happy because I was solving problems, and I think that at the end of the day, one of my core components is about solving problems. But the other part was I was miserable because I felt like I wasn't communicating, one-on-one communication. My voice was being replaced by my ability to be able to fix things. I was becoming overly obsessed in the fixing part and not the communicating part. Thankfully, the dot-com bust helped.
Yeah, ejected.
Yeah, there was, and I went from having an apartment in Germany, an apartment in New York, and an apartment in California, or a long-term hotel in California on Powell Street, 3 places, to living in a 10x10 U-Haul.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that happened for a while. And we'll talk about that in a different story.
Culture shock.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But there's a different story for all of that stuff, and there'll be a time and a place to talk about it. But the important part about all of that stuff is that it allowed me to be able to refocus a lot on what I wanted to do to communicate and what I wanted to be able to do to kind of help. And here's the thing. So all of this stuff has happened, and there was this message that I got back when I was in high school. Right? I was always tracked as gifted or something like that. And I remember when I was in high school, I took an English class, and I hated it. Like, I was supposed to go to all these specialized high schools, and all I wanted to do was play handball and go hang out with my friends and do all that stuff. I didn't want to do any of this stuff. So I showed up to the class and I was pissed. And Edna Senderoff, she turned around and she said, everybody left, and she's like, listen, here's the deal. You can either come back tomorrow or you can leave and don't come back at all. I said, but I'm going to tell you something. Your problem, do you know what an epiphany is? And I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, lady. She's like, do you know this? Do you know this? And she's like, your problem is you have all of this stuff inside you. You don't know the words for it.
Wow. You're lucky you ran into her.
She's like, you don't understand the words. You don't understand what an epiphany is. She's like, vocabulary, English, language will help you get whatever it is that's inside of you that you feel out.
Wow.
And she's like, you can either explore that or you can die with all of that stuff in you as it implodes and it consumes you.
Oh my God.
And so I'm in 7th grade or 8th grade or something like that. And I'm like, I left and I came back. And the words, you know, Miss Senderoff, those words were something that stayed with me for forever. So when I'm sitting with nothing in the middle of all of that stuff, I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, what have I done throughout this entire time? I've made money, lots of it. I've lost money, lots of it. But what have I done to communicate? What have I done to share with people about words? What have I done to be able to do any of that stuff?
Right.
And only until all of that stuff left did I turn around and go, that's the most important part, the communication and teaching people to be able to do that kind of stuff. And throughout that entire time, I'd always moonlighted as a teacher. Taught technical schools, taught seminars, worked on workshops, had my own business where I taught people. I did a lot of, you know, film photography, but then that suffered while I was doing all the IBM stuff. My computer stuff suffered. I had a side business, and there was no communication.
Right.
So in the middle of all of that stuff, I started getting back on it, and I started going, I'm gonna just go be a teacher. And I went back to a technical school, back to being a teacher. And my wife turned around and said, you're better than all of this. She's like, you're better than all of this. She's like, you have certifications out the wazoo, Microsoft, Adobe, Macromedia, all that kind of stuff. She bought me a Photoshop book. And I taught Photoshop. I knew Photoshop. I taught it. And she's just like, I don't buy you this so that you can learn it. I buy you this as a reminder that you could be the person writing this book.
Wow. You married the right woman. You just did.
And in the middle of all of that stuff, we went, and through a set of fortuitous circumstances, I found myself in a situation where I met Scott, met the people.
It was a competition. It was a game / competition, as I recall, at Photoshop World.
I wasn't even supposed to be there.
Tell the story real quickly. I don't have that much time, but it's a really good story. You really got to tell it.
It's a friend of mine was scared stiff. This is the real story. And Scott tells one version of the story. I tell like the
younger side of the story. I heard Scott's version, so I want to hear yours.
It's kind of the same version. But what happened was they were doing this class called So You Think You Could Teach Photoshop.
Right.
And I was doing another class. I was taking another class. And a friend of mine, Stacy, was in this class. And she was scared, completely scared. And she's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, I got it. I'm gonna switch out of my class, go to your class, and when you're up there and you're teaching and you're scared, just look at me.
Yeah.
I got you, we got it. And she said, you do that for me? And I was like, yeah, I got it. And I went and I switched over.
Wow.
And in the middle of switching over, they're like, everybody has to have a presentation. And I'm like, So I wrote a presentation down on a napkin.
Really?
And I took the guys next to me's CD of images, and I was like, all right, here we go. I put my hand up.
Oh my God.
And I did it. And they're like, congratulations, you won. And I'm like, what'd I win? They're like, you got to teach tomorrow. And I'm like, I wasn't ready for today.
So you're teaching now tomorrow on the main floor?
At Photoshop World.
At Photoshop World. That's awesome.
But it was just one of those things where it's just like, I love doing it. I love teaching. I love being a photographer. I love making images. And the parallel to it is the same thing. Exposure, shutter, aperture, tools, Photoshop, all of that stuff. They're just ways to be able to learn words. That's all it is. It's just, once you learn these kinds of things, then you can start getting the emotion out.
Right. And it really is. I keep quoting my friend Keoki Flagg. I don't know if you know his work. He's phenomenal. And he says, for a photo to become art, I love quoting him because I believe it, but he just like boiled it down into these 3 words. He says you have to ask yourself, is it original? Is it emotional? Is it timeless?
And that's the deal. It's like at the end of the day, I love the technology, but I'm not a fan of being a slave to it.
Right, me either.
One of the things that we do here, one of the reasons that we do all of the stuff that we do here is all we want to be able to do is just kind of get that image out and get what you have in your head and in your heart and all of that stuff out by whatever means, be it Photoshop, be it camera training, be it all of that kind of stuff, as fast as possible.
So all of it is in service of the vision that you have and the passion that you have on the inside, getting the inside to come out, just like that teacher helped you get your words out.
It has to be, and when it isn't, the result is drastic. It's bad if you don't serve it.
It really is. It's very dry and flat. There was one photo I hear that got you into photography.
Arnold Newman shot a picture of Stravinsky on the piano. And it's a
phenomenal photo.
And it's one of the reasons. So a lot of my work is known for HDR stuff. So I do a lot of HDR work, but to be completely frank, I don't find as much joy. I'm grateful for it, but I don't find as much joy as portrait work. And I revere masters that can do that kind of stuff, that can take pictures of those kinds of moments. Probably my 3 most favorite photographers are Jay Maisel, Joe McNally, and Gregory Heisler. Gregory Heisler.
Choices.
Gregory Heisler was an assistant to a man who was considered to be the master in portrait photography, a guy named Arnold Newman. And Newman made a picture of Stravinsky at the piano. And that picture, when you see this picture, it breaks every single convention, every single portion of a rule. And we were talking about it earlier, where it's akin to a logo designer. It's akin to a chef.
It's phenomenal.
You take all of these ideas that you have in your head, thoughts about a company or thoughts about something, and you put them into a pot, and you cook it, and you reduce it, and you reduce it, and you reduce it, and you get rid of all of the extraneous stuff so that only the essence of the idea is there. Arnold Newman does that extremely well. Joe McNally does that phenomenally well. Gregory Heisler is a master at doing it. And one of these days, I'd love to be able to get to that. And I don't care if it takes me the rest of my life. Like, I like working on it. I like doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that when you're phenomenal at it. And I'm glad people are having a chance to see that side of you, because your HDR work is phenomenal. But I don't know that a lot of people have seen your portrait work, so it's nice to be able to show that here as well. Gosh, we're running out of time. I hate that. I had one more question. Actually, I've got a couple. This is, all right, I am going to do this. I'm going to go for the random questions section of the show. Okay. So, all right, just, these are just really quick one-off. They don't have to just boom. God, you covered some of them already. What keeps you awake at night?
Fear.
What kind? Related to what?
I can't believe I'm making this into true confession section. I'm a very fearful person.
Really?
I'm an extremely fearful person. I'm horribly fearful. I'm fearful about dying. I'm fearful about, here's something that's gonna, now, everything sounded very uplifting. Here's a very gruesome one. If I lay in bed and I think to myself, I will lay in bed and think to myself, today is one day closer to the day that you're not going to be here.
Really?
I will not sleep for the better part of 4 days. It will literally take
Really?
I will have to take something or do something. I'm a very fearful person.
That was a loaded question I asked.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I fear for my daughter. I fear for my wife. I sleep with a monitor and I stare at my daughter and I'm just like, all right, is everything okay? Is she good? Is she all right? I'm like a horrible helicopter parent. So a lot of my nights are ruled by fear, and I think that that's a horrible admission to make when people go, oh my God, how are you so productive?
You're driven, so to speak. Well, then what inspires you? On the flip side, what inspires you and makes your heart open and feel like, oh, that is the...
Music. Music calms me down. Music calms me down, being able to hear it. And I don't like playing music at home.
You play guitar?
I play guitar, I play piano, I did DJing in the middle of all of that kind of stuff. But when I feel that way, I go back to music. I go back to Chopin, I go back to Beethoven, I go back to Schubert, I go back to Enya, Yanni, and Guitarro, and I have a wide, and that's the thing, it's just I let feeling overcome fear. And fear is a feeling, but there's so many other tranquil feelings that do that kind of stuff, and I find that it gives me a little bit of solace. And that's a very inspirational thing. So music inspires me, and my family inspires me, my daughter inspires me. God, an incredible amount.
Yeah, your daughter is incredible. Final question then. What, at this point, I'm going to ask two questions because I'm not sure which one I'm going to like better.
Okay.
One of them is, at this point in time, knowing that these things change because this is, tomorrow's a new day, but at this point in time, what do you know for sure?
That I want to help. That's all I know. That's all I. If I'm certain of one thing, I'm certain that the reason that I exist is to help. Be by however, I mean, we do so much, whether it be here at the office, whether it be at home, whether it be in my photography, whether it be any of that kind of stuff. I love that the byproduct is a great image. I love that the byproduct is a manifestation of what I see. But I love even more that possibility of somebody looking at that might be able to help them.
Wow.
And I know that I take greater comfort in my ability to be able to help than my ability to create.
I'm not even going to ask my other question. That was so good. And you can see why I love RC so much. He's deep. He's got so much going on. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks you guys for watching. And we'll catch you next time. Okay? Bye.
Take care.